The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
The Avengers Initiative, WandaVision.
Welcome to the Avengers Initiative, WandaVision, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio celebrating a decade of podcasting excellence. Today is Monday, March 1st, 2021, and I'm your host, Jeffrey Aruz. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on Disney Plus's WandaVision. Please welcome my co-hosts, Professor X.
It wasn't Agatha all along.
Oh, that was good. Yes, the musical stylings of the professor. I like it. And Priscilla Rocha.
I have nothing to top that. Hello, everybody.
I'll send it to you, Priscilla, so you can have it as a ringtone. Yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. So before I do the synopsis and all that kind of stuff, just a quick little odds and ends type of thing. Something that I read that I thought was fascinating, and none of us here noticed it. So for the listeners, as well as for my co-hosts, when you eventually do a rewatch of the entire series, maybe binge style, this is something to listen for. You know how every episode, starting with episode 2, starts off with previously on WandaVision? Listen to how Elizabeth Olsen says it in each episode. It starts off very cheery in episode 2 and 3, and then as the episodes go along, she sounds more and more almost exacerbated, or maybe even exhausted. Maybe it's her powers draining or something like that. But it's fascinating how it changes in each episode. There's like the way that the different vocal inflection each time is really interesting. So something just if you're going to do a rewatch, take a listen to that. I saw a sort of not a mashup, but just a quick cut. There was a video online of like her doing it in each episode, and the tonal changes in her voice, with each subsequent episode is really interesting. All right, on that note, let's jump into our discussion of Season 1, Episode 8, which was titled Previously On, and debuted February 26th, 2021 via Disney+. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. Wanda embarks on a troubling journey, revisiting her past for insight into her present and future. So let's dive into this, because we start off in spectacular fashion. We start off actually in Salem, 1693, and we start off here after actually the Marvel Studios logo transitions from its usual red background into a purple background, and then it poofs in Agatha's magic fantastically. We see Agatha Harkness. She's put on trial with her coven of witches, and they basically are like, you have been researching magic that's above your pay grade, and in essence, we have Agatha saying, no, the magic bent to me, and the witches are, I guess, trying to kill Agatha by blasting her with their blue-ish magic, but she ends up turning that around on them, and she ends up draining the coven from their life force, or of their life force. And the final witch, whether it's her biological mother or the coven mother, tries to, use her magic, to stop Agatha, but Agatha ends up doing the same thing to her, draining her of her life force, I guess is what we'll call it. There's interesting dialogue here because, in essence, her mother was like, you're bad. But Agatha is like, no, I can be good, which I thought was interesting. This was a flashback. I don't know if any of us anticipated it, but this was a flashback way back to the 1600s. What did we think of this? Did it allow us to sympathize a little bit with Agatha? Yeah, what do we think of this opening? Priscilla?
I don't know. It's so strange that like she's so good at acting, Catherine Hahn, that when she's like, I can be good, I was like, yes, you can be. I know you can be good. Like I
I love
totally
that.
believe you. Like I believe that the magic just bent to your will. I believe you're the purple witch or whatever the hell they're gonna call you, and that you just used a ton of magic because you're born with a ton of magic, and these witches just don't understand you. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but I totally thought that she was being put on trial for like wrong errors, and she just defended herself against the other witches.
That's interesting. Or you got suckered or sucked into whatever Agatha was selling, which I like because I'm not gonna lie, I got sucked into it as well. You call me a sucker, but I did get sucked into it, and I was believing her. I will say, Marvel, the breakthroughs in technology, like the anti-aging stuff, I mean, was spectacular. I mean, that was Catherine Hahn, but they clearly de-aged her. And I mean, it's a wonder what they can do with this anti-aging stuff. I mean, it's giving actors new life in essence. It's fantastic. Professor, what did you think of the opening with the young Agatha Harkness facing off against the Coven? Which I will say, initially it looked like it was, sort of the stereotypical thing that we've seen with witches, where it's, we're going to burn you at the stake and that sort of thing. But then when we see them sort of like in essence magically handcuff her to the stake, I was like, okay, this is a twist on the sort of typical thing that we've seen with the Salem witch trials.
Yeah, I really like that. The fact that it seemed like it was just going to be a standard, the Puritans going, "You're a witch, burn her," and the fact they set her up there, and even as they were setting her up there, I thought, well, there's not any, you know, wood or anything piled up to burn the witch, so I don't know why they're doing this. But then when they, bound her magically, it was like, oh, this is a witch trial, but entirely different. It's a witch being judged by the other witches. I really did like it. I mean, yes, I agree that the de-aging of Catherine Hahn was tremendous. I mean, it was spectacularly good. It was, I think it did give an interesting take to her character, because she basically argued that she wasn't doing anything wrong. It was that the magic bent to her will. It wasn't that she was trying to do anything wrong. It's just that the magic did that for her, which is an interesting parallel to Wanda going forward. And yes, she did, suck the life out of all the other witches, including her mother, and then took the brooch off of her mother's dead body, which is kind of creepy and not the sort of thing you would do unless you're, kind of going to be a bad guy. But, I thought it was such a strong and interesting way to open the series, and also establish the fact that Agatha is very old and consequently probably very wise and very powerful, which is something we haven't gotten up until now. Obviously, from comic books, we had a suspicion that this is what Agnes would be, or Agatha would be. But to establish that she's been around this long means she must have learned quite a few good tricks, and that pays off in the rest of the episode as well. So I really thought that was a smart and strong opening for the episode, because we need to know who Agatha was. And something I said last week is I want to know, how Agatha came to be, what her backstory was, as well as the backstory. I wasn't anticipating the entire episode would be backstory, but it really set things up beautifully, I thought, for this episode.
Mm-hmm. We learned how Agatha came along. Yes. All right. So before we head into the present day, because that was really the only old flashback. We do get some glimpses into the past as well. But we'll be discussing that in a moment. I want to just set you guys up, both of you, my co-hosts, with two questions that I will be asking at the end of our podcast right before we head into the MVP. So I want both of you to start thinking about it as we're discussing the episode, because they are big questions. And the reason why I mention it now is because I haven't told you guys that I'm going to be asking you this. But I want sort of like, I want your brains just to start thinking about it. The first question that I will be asking you at the end is, so who's the big bad? After watching this episode, who do you think the big bad is? Because we have one episode left after this, so clearly there's going to be a conflict. Who do we think the actual big bad is of WandaVision? And the second question that I will be asking both of you, I want bold predictions. We just have an episode left. This is the penultimate episode of the season. In essence, more than likely, the series. So what is going to happen in the next episode? I want to know who's going to survive, who's going to die, who's just going to poof from existence. Will we get a spectacular cameo from someone? Avengers-ish, or maybe a tease of a big bad for one of the motion pictures. I want a bold prediction, or maybe a couple of bold predictions from both of you. So just something to start thinking about as we continue to discuss this episode, and let's do that. So we get a lot of exposition in the basement, a lot of really interesting stuff, because in essence we learned that Agatha sensed a large amount of magic, all these spells and that sort of thing, and that's what drew her to Westview. And I found that interesting because we had discussed something similar in previous podcasts. Like, in essence, we were talking about like some sort of big bad sensing the magic, and that's what we got. It was Agatha that was sensing the magic, and she was questioning Wanda as to how she did it. And Wanda, is sort of like, I don't know how I did this. There was something that we didn't discuss. We discussed like everything about the previous episode, but the one thing that we didn't discuss was the fly. So in the previous episode, when Wanda is taken into Agatha's house and she sits down and she realizes, where are the kids? There's like a large fly in the house. And the one thing that I would have said in the previous episode was, usually when Mephisto sort of like makes his presence known, it starts off with the fly. That was quickly dispelled in this episode, but the fly was used to sort of explain different spells, in essence, mind control and transmutation and that sort of thing. And Agatha uses it as a means to explain that whatever Wanda has been doing, clearly she's using a whole lot of magic to do it. Professor, just really quickly, what was your thoughts on just this scene in the basement where Agatha is interrogating Wanda about her magic? And did you think it was, and it was very exposition-y, but do you think it was important exposition to sort of set up what we were going to be seeing throughout the rest of the episode?
Oh, very much so, because what they're sort of doing is setting up the idea that, Agatha is someone who has spent hundreds of years, developing her skills, learning the spells, etc., whereas Wanda is just doing it without understanding what she's doing. And the fact that Agatha could lure her into a trap like that and basically say that, because we're here, where I've set things up, you are essentially, powerless, shows, the value of knowledge over raw power. Obviously, Wanda is massively powerful, but Agatha is smarter. She's got more experience. She knows what she's doing. And that gives her the advantage over Wanda, and really establishes early on, the idea that we've had before, which is that, wanting to know how Wanda is doing this, even though she hasn't had the training that she should have had in order to do that. And I think that's, very well done, the way that, Agatha is wandering around going, look, these basic spells, you don't know how I'm doing this. You don't even know these basic things. You don't even know what the runes are. She's dealing with Wanda, who is obviously this massive source of power and doing stuff that she shouldn't be able to do. And, it sort of sets up, the question we had, a couple of episodes ago where Pietro was asking her, hey, how'd you do this? That's because, as we found out, in the Agatha all along, it's because Agatha was Pietro's eyes and ears. The whole thing about Agatha has been she's trying to figure out how Wanda is doing this, and I think this was really playing that up. And again, early on in the episode, it wasn't clear because we had the Agatha all along. Was Agatha the bad guy? Was Agatha the big bad? Et cetera, et cetera. But no, Agatha is just someone who's trying to figure out what Wanda is doing and how she's doing it. And that has been consistent for the entire series when you look back on it with what we know now. So I thought this opening scene in the basement was really important, A, to establish that as powerful as Wanda is, she doesn't have the knowledge to use her powers effectively, whereas Agatha or Agnes is smarter and is therefore going to be in control, for the duration of the episode. So I thought it really set things up nicely. The idea of someone, it's a bit like, if you're watching, a bar fight between, a really big guy who's just big and strong, so has never really had to learn how to fight, versus someone who has learned, how to fight. It won't be much of a fight because, the person who knows what they're doing will be victorious in the end. And that was the case with Agatha. Even though Agatha probably isn't anywhere near as powerful as the Scarlet Witch on her own, she knows what she's doing and lured her into a situation where she was trapped. So I think that was, really good establishing that, for the rest of the episode, it's going to be Agatha who's in control of the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. Lots of really great points. I think the first moment where Wanda kind of realizes that she's not in control when she tried to read Agatha's mind was brilliantly played from both of them, because there was a sort of shock and almost fear on Elizabeth Olsen's face of like, my powers aren't working on her. And there was just this wonderful confidence that Catherine Hahn exuded as Agatha, that, she was like, oh, you think you can read my mind, Toots? Like, you've never been able to read my mind. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, don't you know about any of this? It was brilliant. There was also
I
a
don't think she was trying to
tinge.
read her mind. I think she was trying to control her mind the way she was controlling all the other
Well,
times
yeah.
she
Well, she said something
was.
like, "You're trying to get into my mind," and so that's what I meant to say. But what I want to ask you about, Priscilla, that I thought was interesting about this opening as well, and it was also kind of sprinkled in throughout their interaction throughout the episode, was the tinge of jealousy on from Agatha's point of view, the jealousy of all of this spectacular magic that Wanda has been able to create, and Agatha's inquisitive nature as to like, how did you do it? What did you think of that, Priscilla?
Man, that stems all the way back to like the flashback to the witches era, back when she was like, you opened the book and you started looking into things that weren't your own, and she's like, the magic just simply bent to my will. Like, she's interested in things like this because she's power hungry. She wants more magic. She wants more power, and she wants to know how to control all of these magics. So when she sees all of these spells being cast off at once, and she sees someone doing that, she's like, oh shit, someone else here has a lot of juice. I need to know how they got this, and I need to know how to make this my own now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the words of Lizzo, blame it on the juice. Blame it on the juice. Yeah. So, all right. So all of that exposition was.
I just want to step in. I'm not sure that I agree with that. I'm not sure that Agnes wants to control the power or gain the power for herself. I think she is just curious as to what the hell is going on here.
Okay. I don't think I disagree with that either. I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to get a clearer explanation from Agatha in the next episode. I do think there is a curiosity. There is a little bit of a jealousy. There is she's hella intrigued by what's going on. Whether I think she wanted, in essence, to learn how to do it maybe herself. Clearly, at the end, she has a better understanding of what we're all dealing with. We'll get to that a little bit later. But there is an interest there from Agatha, and that interest is what forces Wanda to go through some real-life reruns. in essence. I mean, she was the star of her own sitcom, and now this is your life, baby. So Agatha, through magic, she sends herself and Wanda through a journey back in time so that she can greater understand exactly what Wanda did in the present, what created basically the hex, as we've been calling it. And the first key moment that we visit is, oddly enough, and I was not expecting this when I watched it the first time, it's the night of the bomb. Because we've heard this story of the Stark bomb in the house and that sort of thing, and that's exactly the night that we see. It starts off lovely with the Maximoff family, practicing their English and watching sitcoms. And that night, young Wanda was allowed to choose the sitcom, and it was the Dick Van Dyke Show, the Walnut episode. I will say, point of personal privilege, when Oleg ended up opening the suitcase with the TV shows on DVD, I actually own a whole bunch of those box sets, which I thought was kind of crazy. And that special edition of the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is the complete series of the Dick Van Dyke Show, I own that one. And I was like, look at them having my damn DVDs on WandaVision. It was kind of neat. Because they could have just made generic boxes and stuff for shows, which they did have a couple generic boxes in them, but they actually got the rights to some of the real box sets, which is kind of neat to see. So while they're watching TV, that's when the bomb comes in. Parents die, and they hide under the bed, because the bomb could explode. And Agatha kind of comes to the realization, or at least she deduces, whether it's accurate or not, she feels like Wanda was born a witch, and she was using some hex magic to sort of keep the bomb from exploding. She was using, she called it a probability hex. Wanda isn't fully sure of it, but I think we are left wondering if that is what actually happened, because as I think Agatha ends up saying, so it was just, this crazy luck that it didn't explode for 2 days. So let's talk about this scene. Priscilla, what did you think of young Wanda and the nights when, things took a turn for the worse for her and Pietro? Loud
Yeah,
Pietro, I should say.
that was a sad scene. The child actors they keep hiring for these scenes are aces because they played their parts perfectly. I thought that they did them well. I thought that they acted out Wanda and Pietro really well. I just really wish that I don't know. I wish I had seen the probability spell. I wish I had seen maybe a spark of red coming out of her hand or something, because like you said, it leaves the viewer thinking, is it really that Stark's technology failed for 2 days, which is highly unlikely, or is it that a baby witch was born at this time and created a probability hex that she had no idea how to do? Which is
Mm-hmm.
also highly unlikely because she doesn't know how to do magic yet.
Mm-hmm. Interesting questions. I wonder if we'll ever get the answers to them, but interesting questions. Professor, so in this flashback, outside of, seeing this moment that has been discussed in the past, we also see where young Wanda's love of American television came from. We saw, that the family was, spent their time together watching sitcoms and, in essence, practicing their English. So we basically get the answer to why the sitcom format, which I think is really important. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was, we got some callbacks to things we've seen on WandaVision. We clearly, the Stark toaster commercial from the very first episode, the 50s episode, we got the beep, beep, beep from the bomb there. We also got an interesting callback to also that same episode. Remember the Sokovian greeting of covering the eyes? We had a moment where Irina ended up covering Wanda's eyes, which I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but it's something that I noticed. Did you enjoy getting the answer to where Wanda's love of sitcoms came from?
I did, but I don't think it was a surprise in any way. I think we'd suspected this was going to be the case, probably since our first podcast after episode 2, I mentioned that, something that I've done, in the pandemic world is that, as the world seems to be melting down and going totally crazy, I've just been immersing myself in old sitcoms and stuff like that and rewatching shows that I've watched in the past, just as essentially comfort food. And, the idea that Wanda is doing the same thing makes complete sense to me. I think the covering of the eyes was, maybe stretching things a little far because, I think if you go back to episode 1 of WandaVision, obviously that was a joke, about the covering of eyes because, she was, mistaking the boss for Vision. So I think that might be pushing things a little far, but I did like it. I like the idea that, this was, a ritual with the family. And by the way, you notice the mother and father, reclining on the couch in exactly the way that Wanda and Vision do, with the kids on the floor in front of them, with, by the way, a pair of twins sitting watching TV in front of them, recreating that family dynamic. I thought it was great. As I say, I don't think I was terribly surprised by a lot of what happened here, but I really liked the way they did it because it was filling in the pieces and building up the backstory to these characters, and not so much explaining in the sense of, oh my God, what a surprise, more in the sense of, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. But no, I really like the fact that it was like that. And even the idea of, her accent, how it comes and it goes is because, they established that, when they're doing the TV night, they try to speak English. They don't speak Sokovian. And so for her, the fact that she learned English from watching these TV shows makes sense that, she would be speaking in the style and the cadence of these TV shows when she's living in that reality. So again, really nice job of bringing in the explanation of that, to sort of justify, what we've experienced for the past 7 or 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Two other things that I want to mention before we move to the next flashback.
Oh, also,
yes.
Sorry, just wanted to mention a little thing. The idea of the probability hex in the comics, Scarlet Witch wasn't actually magical. She was a mutant, and what she had was what was called a probability hex. And this is something I've mentioned in previous episodes, which is that, her powers are like totally, divorced from what they were in the comics. So her probability hex was she had the ability to affect probability within a limited field. So in this case, one could argue that was, a manifestation of her, in the comic books, mutant power. The probability hex is she can affect probability. So by, sort of reaching out and, she affected the probability that the bomb would fail. So, that seems to be a little bit of a callback to her original powers in the comics as opposed to what she is in this series.
Very interesting. Okay, so 2 points that I want to make before we move on to the next flashback. The first one is in the Halloween episode. Remember we had a quick flashback to a young Wanda and a young Pietro trick-or-treating? These actors were not the same actors. So remember at the end of that flashback, Wanda goes, I don't remember it that way. It goes to show that was specifically for, in essence, the show, and I'm using the show in air quotes. So I thought that was a neat choice, having a different young Wanda and young Pietro for the actual real flashback, for the real story. And the other thing that I thought was just another thing that was just interesting about Wanda and her love of sitcoms, which really, just now goes back to give a really interesting richness to what we saw in those first couple of episodes is, she loves shenanigans. She loves like the mischief of sitcoms. And the one thing that she said at the end of it, when the bomb came through and everything, this will all be a dream. And, when I wake up, everything will be fine, because that's a sitcom. A sitcom always has a happy ending. There's always some resolution to whatever conflict is there in the episode. And I thought it was nice. It's just showed us that these sitcoms really had a strong effect on young Wanda, and it gives what we saw, especially on those first couple episodes that were more sitcom heavy versus wrinkle heavy. Just why there was always a happy ending at the end, and why it really fit. They really did a strong emphasis on the sitcom trope and the usual sitcom cliches.
Also, with that in mind, the episode that she chose to watch of the Dick Van Dyke Show was an episode in which, things went totally crazy and wrong. And it's because Dick Van Dyke's character, Rob Petrie, was having a dream in that episode.
Yes. Yeah. A classic episode with the walnuts. If you've never seen it before, it's fantastic. I don't even think you need to see any of the other episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show for context. I mean, it's just a fantastic and classic episode of 50s television. So the next flashback that we see, I will say that the way that we're seeing these flashbacks, we sort of enter a new flashback with through a period specific or location specific door, which I thought was really interesting. So Agatha is still, wondering, what happened, what sort of sparked something. And so the next one that we see is of Wanda when she initially volunteers to be experimented on by Hydra. And she is told to approach the Mind Stone, and it ends up being attracted to her. And we see the Mind Stone sort of burst, and in essence what we're seeing is the Mind Stone probably activating, and as Agatha says, maybe even augmenting her magical abilities. It's strange because I don't know how we're supposed to interpret what Hydra saw, because as it was happening, it looked like the Hydra people, the doctors, scientists, whatever you want to call them, were reacting to Wanda and the stone. But then we see that they don't have video footage of that, which was interesting.
Because she rewound time.
Okay, so that's how you're interpreting that? Okay.
In the series.
We did see that in the series, yeah. So I guess maybe we can yeah. Okay, I'll go with that explanation. I can dig that. And there is a moment though where she's watching the Brady Bunch. It's another sort of callback to what we've seen with the sitcom trope earlier in the season. But she ends up standing up and sort of like zooms in on what's going on the TV. I don't really know how to interpret that, so I don't know if either of you have an answer to that. But Priscilla, since you were talking, what did you think of this flashback? I should also say that when the Mind Stone kind of bursts, we see her see what I'm assuming is her future. We see a particular costume that we know is from the comics. If you know anything about the comics, in sort of shadow form, it's quite fascinating. Priscilla, what's your take on this Hydra flashback? This Hydra flashback.
She sees herself as the Nexus being, so she sees herself like with her full power and her like full gear, maybe in another dimension or in another world where she wore that outfit, or maybe it's herself in the future. It really doesn't matter because she is the Nexus being, so it's her in essence, which is the same in every dimension.
Okay.
So
That's an
she
interesting
sees
take on it.
that and that activates her in this dimension.
Ah, interesting. Very interesting. Professor, what about you? What's your take on what we saw at the Hydra facility? And what's your take on, I don't know, do you have an interpretation of the scene at the end of that flashback where she's watching the Brady Bunch and she just becomes sort of almost entranced by what she's watching?
Well, the Mind Stone scene, my take is that that was the Scarlet Witch in the future reaching back to Wanda in the past to activate her. So this is not a random thing. This is not necessarily, a Mind Stone thing. I think this is going to be, that Wanda, when she, fully manifests as the Scarlet Witch, will be reaching back through time to activate that power in herself, essentially bootstrapping her. As for the Brady Bunch scene, if you look at it, it was, the one character and the little girl playing with her doll, and the doll insisting the doll was real to her, but her brother was saying no, it's just it's just stuff with straw and stuff like that. But the girl was saying no, but it's real to me and I love it. And if that's not a parallel for what's happening with Vision in her present, what else could it be? Why else would they chose that particular scene of the Brady Bunch?
That's genius, Professor. Because I was wondering what the hell, why, what was
Because
going
honestly,
on here?
if you were just choosing the Brady Bunch to choose the Brady Bunch, you would have chosen a scene that had other characters from the Brady Bunch in it. To have those two characters say exactly those things, I think that's obviously the idea that when she was there, in that cage, she saw that scene about loving that doll, which wasn't technically real but was real to her. That is Vision in the present.
That's brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. A plus, Professor. A plus.
I am dropping a mic on my end.
I know, right? Yes. Speaking of dropping mics, and I know that this line had to have been for us, but because like Agatha was like, all right, everything is starting to make sense, and then she goes, I have a theory, but I need more, and I'm like, that's basically been us for the past couple of weeks. We have theories, but we need more. And so when a new door opens, something that was really interesting that it was Agatha's reaction because this time around, as opposed to the previous doors, Wanda has been very hesitant to walk through them, especially the one that led to the Hydra compound. This one, she just quickly, willingly opened that door. And we see that it's because it's the Avengers compound. And this takes place after Pietro's death. It is when she's at the compound and she's a stranger in a new land. And this was maybe the moment where Vision and her connected, possibly for the very first time. There's a fantastic conversation about grief where Wanda gives just the most eloquent monologue about what grief feels like, and Vision, has a spectacular line about what grief means and how it's love persevering. And we also see the sitcom trope come back because she's watching an episode of Malcolm in the Middle, and the father in the episode, he has like an entire deck collapse on him, and this is where Wanda sort of explains to Vision that no, this isn't that type of show. He isn't really hurt. There's always a happy ending, and everything is going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay, and we see them connect and bond, which was really nice to see. It's kind of like a lost chapter in the Wanda and Vision saga. Professor, what did you think of this flashback to Wanda at the Avengers compound?
Oh gosh, it was so good. Well, just like everything else about this episode, it was so good. One of the things that we didn't really get in the Avengers movies is we didn't get the chance to see Wanda and Vision falling in love. By the time we met them in Infinity War, they were already mid-relationship. So this was sort of like showing the beginnings of that relationship, showing them, connecting with each other. And the way in which they connected with each other, I thought was great. Showing her once again, dealing with trauma by retreating and, watching these comforting sitcoms, as, something that we've seen, in the previous two flashbacks as well. But then to get Vision to give that line, about grief is just love, persevering, which is, I think entirely the focus of this whole series. If you're looking to wrap all of WandaVision up in one line, that was the line. Trying to deal with grief, not being willing to let go of something. The love won't give up. The love won't let go. And so when you're someone who does have the power to make things real, then obviously you're going to make things persevere in that way. Boy, it was so good and so moving. Like, absolutely, moving, crushing, if you know the characters, or even if you've just been watching this series. But there was also just a little moment. I think it was at this point that, Agatha, who'd been, totally, cynical and funny up to that point, she kind of wiped away a tear at that point. And I think that was the point where, and again, I think it's showing that, she's not just a cynical manipulator. She is someone who is, experiencing it and feeling it along with Wanda. And oh boy, just so good, those characters together. And again, even though, technically Agatha was outside of it, her reaction to that was just so good. Boy, just, like a scene that's just two people sitting there in a two-shot talking to each other. And that's all you need when you have really, really good actors and really great writing. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that line, anywhere. The idea that, this is what grief is, to sum it up in that way. Oh my God, that was so cleverly written and so smart. And as I say, I think, as far as I'm concerned, totally encapsulated everything this show is about.
Yeah. His line before that was really interesting as well, because clearly we know that they fall in love. And Visions, sort of opens up by saying initially, I've been alone all my life. Like, all I have is, all I've ever experienced is loneliness. I've never had someone that, I would miss, in essence. And I was like, wow, like, that was just, I thought that was a beautiful line as well, because clearly we know where their storyline goes.
Also, I was kind of thinking, in that moment that, obviously, Wanda was Vision's first and only love. Probably Vision was her first love as well, which just makes it that much more crushing, in the next flashback. It's not just, dealing with someone that, that you've lost. It's that her first love. I think, just makes it that much more gut-wrenching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big facts right there. Priscilla, I want to get your take on this scene as well, and also want to get your take on what the professor mentioned, because I was going to end up mentioning this. I like focused on Agatha a lot in this episode, especially in these sort of interstitials where we see her poking and prodding and being incredibly cynical, being incredibly snarky, being almost like kind of exacerbated by Wanda and her, what she considered to be Wanda's like ineptitude of like not knowing how she did what she did with the hex. And so I was like focused on her facial expressions, her reactions to everything, and I noticed the wiping away of the tear as well. I mean, she did that, but then she went back to sort of like being really cynical of like, Vision's dead, your parents dead, your brother's dead, and all this kind of stuff. And I get that she's doing that to get a reaction from Wanda so that she can find out what Wanda did. But there was a moment of humanity with Agatha. Did you notice that? And was that a moment where you were like, maybe questioning what Agatha was doing, or at least questioning whether she was a villain per se?
Yeah, when she wiped the tear away, I'm like, is she trying to be a mentor to her? Is she trying to pull like the magic out of her, trying to say like, no, you need to learn how to control your magic. You need to learn more about magic. You need to learn. why you did this. You need to confront what you did. Like, is that what she's trying to do with this? Is she trying to be the good guy? Is she actually the good guy? And I was just left a little confused by that. But when she went right back to being cynical, and later on when you see her choking out the kids, I'm like, nope, she's not being good. She's just had a moment there where she, like everyone else in the audience, was affected by what Vision said in his beautiful words about guilt being the preservation of love, and that was beautiful and something that would touch even the coldest of hearts.
Yes, very true. There was another line. It was in the sort of the setup for the Hydra flashback where she says something like, because Wanda is very hesitant to go back there. She was like, "It's good medicine. It'll be good for you." Which it was kind of snarky, but I felt like there was a little bit of truth to that as well. If I'm being quite honest, like my whole opinion about Agatha completely changed in this episode, especially by the end of the episode. So let's get into the next flashback. So this is after Endgame, after Wanda gets blipped back. Initially, Wanda is hesitant to continue on, but after Agatha basically is like, you wanted him back. You wanted Vision back. What happened when Vision wasn't there to bring you back from the darkness? And that's what allows Wanda to sort of push through. And we see her go to the Sword compound, and she's basically like, I know he's here. I know Vision's here. I want his body. We understand that she wants to bury him and that sort of thing. We see her. Well, I should say there was a badass moment where she just, because the guy's like, I gotta let you through, I gotta buzz you in or something like that, and she just uses her magic to get into the compound, which was spectacular. She meets Hayward for the very first time, and not that it should come as a surprise, but we learn that Hayward is a liar because we saw, in essence, edited footage of this interaction. And in episode 4, was it? I believe we were led to believe that Wanda broke into the Sword facility and stole Vision's body. We see that Wanda was shown Vision's body, and she sees him broken up into many pieces. In essence, his corpse is mutilated, and she's like, I just want to bury him. Hayward questions that, with your powers and that sort of thing. She's like, nope, I just want to bury him. I just want to give him a proper burial. And Hayward's like, well, I don't know if I want you to bury, billions of dollars worth of vibranium. I don't know if that makes any sense. And in essence, he's like, you don't have any rights to him, period. She breaks the glass and goes down to inspect the body. And in an echo to a line that she said in Avengers Infinity War, where she uses magic on his forehead, and she's like, I just feel you. She says, I can't feel you. And she leaves heartbroken. So we're going to stop right here because we're going to discuss a whole bunch of other stuff in a moment. Let's talk about this scene, in an incredibly sad scene, but a scene that we had been told about, and we were told a different version of it. Priscilla, what did you think of this sequence? And is this when you officially made the confirmation that Hayward is a douche?
Oh God, that pissed me off so much. I was like, Hayward, you scumbag, you utter piece of shit.
I
She
know,
didn't
right?
steal shit from you.
All I could think of was Kathy Bates from American Horror Story Coven. Lies. Lies, lies, lies.
This is so true. Yes, that totally was going through my head. Like, he invited her in. Even when she broke the windows, he was like, no, it's fine. Let her see. Like, all this time, she had permission to do what she did. And she left peaceably. She left without any bit of him, like, bit of his corpse, I should say, because he wasn't there. He wasn't there for her anymore. She didn't feel him there. She couldn't bring him back to life the way he was baiting her. The whole time he was baiting her to put him back together with her magic. Because that's what he wanted. Oh, God. Like, this might be getting early, but he's totally my villain. Fuck him. I hate him.
Okay. Well, nice. I like that. Professor, what about you? What did you think of this sequence at the sword facility?
It was really good, sort of showing her frustration, dealing with the bureaucracy, and then, going into Haywood's office. And, a couple of lines he said, about, it's not like she could bring him back or anything like that. And it did seem like he was trying to goad her in that direction. Because as we find out by the end of the episode, his whole focus is to get Vision up and running again as a sentient weapon. So, seeing that scene from that perspective, as opposed to the heavily edited version that he showed early on in the series, again, I don't think it was a surprise necessarily, because we sort of had suspected this and speculated on this in previous episodes. But getting that revelation, I thought was really good, and also set up the post credit scene tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Elizabeth Olsen was fantastic. She was fantastic throughout the entire episode, but just the emotions that she brought in this scene was spectacular. That single teardrop before she ended up, shattering the window was awesome. And what was interesting is we had seen his office before. We saw when Monica first showed up. That was his office, and we saw the window. We just had no idea what was going on down there at all. That was hella interesting and intriguing, and clearly, that was after what happened with Wanda. It was just, yeah. Gives that office a whole new meaning and a whole new look, especially, if we're going to go back and rewatch that scene with Monica way back in episode 4. All right, so moving right along, we Wanda ends up going to the car. I should say her car is a lovely shade of red. And there's an envelope in the passenger seat, and we just see her drive. And she drives to Westview, New Jersey. And we see Westview. And in essence, Westview is a small town that, it's not seeing the best of days. We see some of our familiar people, our Westviewites, just looking maybe not the happiest. And we see her drive to an empty plot of land where there's sort of like the skeleton of what will be a house. And we see that what was in the envelope is the deed to that land. And it says, Vision had written on it, to grow old in, V, and a little heart. And in essence, this is the home that Vision bought for them. And remember, we had learned that it was in the episode, the Halloween episode, where Pietro was questioning Wanda about, how did this happen? She was lonely. She was at her darkest point. And we see that moment. And we see the magic sort of just shoot out of Wanda. And it builds a house around her. It transforms Westview. So we see the start of the hex. And her magic also creates the Vision that we've seen in Westview. And we see him welcome her home, and then we see Wanda, watching herself in Vision in the black and white world. And well, I guess we'll continue on. Might as well, because it's just a short little moment. So Agatha claps, and she realizes what has happened. She magics herself away. She's outside. She's got the kids. I don't know what you call it. It's like those chains that they put the kids on so they can't run away. Except that she's actually choking them. And she's like, I know what you are. I know what this is. This is chaos magic. You don't even know how dangerous you are. You could do anything, but you're having breakfast for dinner. She's like, this is chaos magic, and you're this mythical creature that I've heard of. You're the Scarlet Witch. And that's where the episode ends. We'll talk about the mid-credit scene in a moment. So we see the initiation the initiation, the initial moment that the hex was created. It was Wanda all along. In essence, it was Wanda's grief. It was her at her darkest point. Priscilla, talk to me about it. Talk to me about the visuals. I'll ask as a separate question about what Agatha says. Yeah, so let's focus specifically right now on the Hex and Westview and all that kind of stuff.
I noticed right away that it does like this kind of like QB magic, kind of like how the House of M and the other like comics that are related to the House of M like has that sort of like hexagonal like QB magic too that the Scarlet Witch has when she like erased and rewrote the entire like cosmos to bend to her will at that time. So I was like, nice going, Marvel. Looking back at your comics and using that for your art direction in this go round. It's nice. I like that. I also liked the fact that you had the background advertisements changed to what was it again? One of them was like the paper towels clean up in a snap. Clean up in a Thanos snap or something like that. It said something about Thanos, and I was like, what? Oh my god. I had to pause that and see. And, like, I was just amazed that she just uses stuff that's her pain and uses stuff that's, like, her memories, and she uses it again in the ads in around the town, and that's exactly what we theorized on the show, so it's fitting. But I also was looking around this episode, and as I was watching this, I was like, wow, she's going through so much heartbreak, but she's using so much power to just rewrite an entire town and to bend to her will. And she's recreating Vision. She didn't do what Hayward said and stole Vision, or the parts didn't just kind of fly from Sword and go there, and she didn't use the rudimentary parts. She created him all over again, which makes me wonder if that's why he was breaking apart once he left the Hex, because he's part of the Hex and he has to be within its confines to survive. And if so, does that mean we're going to lose him in the future?
It's a very important question. I feel like we'll be getting an answer to that, at least in the bold predictions section in a little bit. Yeah, a lot of really interesting points, Priscilla. Professor, what about you? The Hex and Westview. What did you think of that sequence?
Well, I think someone on this podcast said many episodes ago that Wanda was the big bad. Wanda was doing everything. She wasn't being manipulated into this. She wasn't being dropped into some artificial creation or anything like that. This was her dealing with her grief, and I think this established that. Wanda started the whole thing. It was Wanda all along, as you said. And I think they did a great job of doing that and, establishing that fact that, it wasn't that, Mephisto was, the bunny or the bug or anything like that. This was Wanda dealing with her grief, and, her powers just erupted and, rewrote reality in that community. And I thought they did a great job of sort of explaining how she got to that point. She has lost so much, and then having that, the property that Vision bought for them, just pushed her over the edge. And, I thought the special effects were great. It's amazing how Elizabeth Olsen can bend herself back like that and not fall to the ground as most of us would, when bending over backwards quite that far.
Mm-hmm.
No, I thought it was really, really good. And just, that emotional punch in the gut of, coming to this location and finding that Vision had bought this plot of land for them to grow old together in this, otherwise unremarkable little community. And, getting back to, something we saw a couple of episodes ago, when fake Pietro was under Agatha's control and, mentioned that, all the same people, better jobs and stuff like that. And we saw them in their previous jobs and what Westview was like before Wanda took it over. So it's kind of interesting in that, within Wanda's hex bubble, things are actually better. People do have better lives, aside from the fact that they have no agency and no real control. But, they're leading better lives with better jobs. I did find it interesting that, we did see most of the characters. We did not see Dottie. Couldn't help but notice that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. I noticed that it what you referenced, Professor, like she did make their lives better. I do still remember what I believe his name is Norm, his Vision's coworker. When he got snapped out, like there was fear in his voice, and he wanted to call his sister. So even though she did make their lives better, she is controlling them. I mean, Agatha even says it, in the setup scene in the basement. She's like, you're controlling all these people. You're giving them, complex storylines. You're controlling people all the way to the edge of town, even though we did see in the Halloween episode that, the further away from, I guess, maybe Wanda, the sort of the NPCs, kind of freeze. It's almost like when the Sims freeze or something like that. So she does have control over them, but it's not as strong. But she's still controlling them, which is fascinating. And, it led Agatha to really wonder and marvel, no pun intended, at Wanda's powers. So speaking of that, so let's talk about the scene with Agatha. In essence, she's telling us what anybody that knows about Wanda Maximoff already knows. I mean, she's sort of spelling it out for maybe the casual Marvel viewer. Once again, there was another meme that was similar to the one, where Agatha revealed that, or Agnes revealed that she's Agatha Harkness. It was a meme that was like, I know that Wanda is the Scarlet Witch. I know that she uses chaos magic. But then it's like, and then it says, Agatha tells us that she's the Scarlet Witch and that she uses chaos magic. And then the meme is like, someone's whose jaw is dropping down to the ground, because we're all like, oh my God. And it's not necessarily, oh my God, because it's brand new information. It's kind of like, oh my God, because this is brand new information in the MCU. This was the first time those two words have ever been said, Scarlet Witch. It's the first time the term chaos magic has been used. So it's fascinating. But, I know it wasn't a surprise to both of you, but what did we think of this moment? Because it was certainly a game changer as far as Wanda, as a character, period, in the MCU. I'll just open it up to the floor, whomever wants to chat about it first.
I liked it. I like the fact that this Wanda as the Scarlet Witch isn't just a random mutant or a random altered human or something like that. She is this mythical figure that presumably magic users like Agatha have known about for a very long time. So it ties her into a larger magical mythology and gives her justification for the name, because really there's no reason to call Wanda Maximoff the Scarlet Witch. She did technically wear a cool red leather duster, but there was nothing all that scarlet about her. So the idea of tying her into that background gives her a reason for the name to exist. In a way that there's no real justification for calling her that otherwise. So I thought it was a clever little bit of fan service or a retroactive explanation. Much like as I said, most of what happened in this episode, with the exception of the mid-credit scene that we'll talk about in a minute. Nothing about this episode really surprised me. It was all just filling in the pieces in a way that I thought worked and filled in kind of what I had expected it to be. Agatha being the one to give her the name, made total sense, and gives a justification for Wanda as the Scarlet Witch continuing going forward.
Priscilla, what about you? Your thoughts on the ending of this episode? We'll get into the mid-credits in a moment.
Man, to finally hear Scarlet Witch, to finally hear chaos magic, this is great. This is finally like injecting it in. We totally thought that we were going to get mutants or the M word said at some point during this series. And of course, like, I felt that we weren't going to get something that big in this series, but we were going to get something big. And this is a big thing. We're getting the start, I would say, of the mutants, with the start of one of them at the very least, with the Scarlet Witch and chaos magic being brought to life here. We're finally erasing Whedon's bullshit and starting fresh with something new and something innovative and something that fits Marvel as it is now. And I love it. Bring me more of this. I love it.
More. How do you like it? How do you like it? All right, this mid-credit scene. Good grief. Okay, so I should say, a little note. This was the very first episode of the series that A, did not have an opening theme song, B, did not have a commercial, and C, did not have Please Stand By. Usually at the end of the episode it flashes Please Stand By. It did not say Please Stand By. Episode 4 did not have an opening theme or a commercial, but it did have the Please Stand By. So this was the very first episode that didn't have either of those three things, which has become standard on WandaVision. So we get a mid-credit scene, our second mid-credit scene, and we basically get a greater understanding as to what Project Cataract is. We learn that Hayward and Sword, they've tried, in essence, millions of ways of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, and I guess they finally figured it out, and they figured out a way to power it up because they did not have an energy source to power up this this new whitish gray, grayish white vision. They end up using the drone that Wanda tossed at them back in episode 4. They use the chaos magic from it as this Project Cataract Vision's power source. So we see him power up. Dun dun dun. So, what did we think of this mid-credit scene? Clearly, it's setting things up for what should be a spectacular finale with probably some sort of altercation between what would we call him? Hex Vision and Cataract Vision.
I think he's Blank Vision.
Blank Vision. Interesting. Yeah.
It looks like that in the comics.
Yeah. Yeah. He is from the comics. Professor?
Okay, I've been kind of a jerk in this whole episode talking about, it was all things that I predicted, and I said this episodes ago and everything like that. I did not see this coming. I was totally gobsmacked. My jaw hit the ground. It should have been obvious because, they established earlier in the episode that Wanda did not, in fact, take Vision's parts into the Hex to recreate Vision, which means the parts were still there. So it made perfect sense. But in that moment of seeing, the white Vision, I just went, oh my God. I totally did not see that coming. Really surprised. I'm really curious as to, when this new Vision speaks, what his voice will be. Will it be Paul Bettany? Will it be James Spader? Because if there's no Vision in there, as there's no reason for him to speak like Paul Bettany. So it could be James Spader using the sort of Ultron voice. I don't know. It will be interesting, but yeah, it totally took me by surprise. It showed that, Hayward was, trying to, his whole purpose was to get this thing online. So presumably they're going to send it into the Hex, and we're going to have a battle to, save, it'll be, Vision versus Vision, double Vision, possible title for the final episode. But it totally took me by surprise. And again, comic book accurate, because when they had the original Vision and he had, his memory and his personality extracted, what was left was this ghostly white Vision. And by the way, curiously enough, I was, reading something about that. Apparently that was the original. Vision was always supposed to be this ghostly white figure, from the beginning, because he was supposed to be a Vision, which is, a term for a ghost. But the colorist decided that it didn't look good, so it gave him the red and green coloring and yellow that was his character for so long. Which it was just sort of interesting little callback to that. But yes, the idea of the remorseless, emotionless Vision is certainly comic book accurate, and presumably Hayward's going to send him into the Hex to do battle with Wanda.
Mm-hmm. You didn't see that coming.
I did not see that coming.
Very interesting. Yes, I like your Ultron ideas just because the internet has been obsessed with Ultron. As I mentioned before, it's been trending a lot with WandaVision. But there is a theory online. Some people think Ultron is coming back for some reason. And they are wondering if Ultron will be in this new Vision. Some people think, and it is canon in, I think, the Avengers cartoon or something, or at least in one of the Marvel cartoons, where Ultron does return as a human, and some people think Hayward is Ultron. I don't know if I want to believe that, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless. I feel like all of the theories out there have not come true, which is a good thing, because that means, that we could have seen that coming, whether it's Mephisto or Nightmare or Chthon or Grim Reaper. We were all sort of, wrapped up in like Easter eggs and that sort of thing. And it turned out it wasn't any of that, which is a good thing, I would say. It has been, the series has been very surprising, which has been quite nice. Although there is some stuff that we could predict based off of just, from things in a narrative point of view. Anything else to add?
If you were wondering why, after watching the early episodes of WandaVision, Disney Plus kept pushing you to watch Age of Ultron. Oh, there was a reason for that.
Oh, totally. But I said this, I think it was in the first episode. Age of Ultron is probably one of the most important movies in the MCU, point blank, in the period. So much was set up in that film that, it's still sort of paying off. Yeah. Priscilla, what about you? Anything else to add? Were you done expressing your POV on the mid-credits?
On Hayward and the blank Vision?
Yes.
I have some theories as to what's going to happen, but that leads to the question that you asked.
Oh, okay, so you have bold predictions.
Yes, I have bold predictions.
Okay, all right. So before we get into that, I want to just ask a couple of questions. So before I ask you the official questions that I asked, TVline.com actually released an article today that I thought was interesting because it was like it's titled "11 Burning Questions We Need Answered in the Upcoming Finale." And I read the questions and I was like, well, I don't think we're going to get the answers to all of these because some of them are I think important and some of them I think will be questions that will be answered in subsequent films. But I wanted to get your take on it. Like I don't necessarily need your answer to the question, but I am curious if you all think they will be answered in this final episode. So the first question is, who is Jimmy's witness? Remember the witness that he had in witness protection? Do you think that's something that needs to be answered, or do you think it was just a means to get Wu to Westview?
I think they should answer it. There's no reason not to answer it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they should answer it. I think it's an easy enough thing to just be like at the very end, him talking to someone at the and it doesn't even matter if it's a throwaway character or it's a background character, or if it's the postman or the pizza guy. Like it's just something to do.
Okay. The next question that they had is, who is Monica's engineer friend? Do we think it's going to get answered in the next episode, or is this something that might follow Monica the next time we see her?
Oh, that's gonna follow Monica the next time we see her.
I honestly don't know. They did sort of set it up in a way that it felt like it was going to be more significant. It's entirely possible that it's just the colonel or the captain or whatever it was who had it there. I could sort of totally see it being just a post credits thing where it's it's either someone named Reed or someone who reveals themselves as a Skrull.
Oh, interesting. The next two questions we have to get answers to, I feel, in the next episode. It's what's Hayward's endgame and what's Agatha's endgame. So I feel like we need answers to that in the next episode. So I feel like we all agree with that, yes?
I think we already have them.
Okay.
Hayward's endgame was to get this sentient weapon up and running, and Agatha's endgame was figuring out what's going on with this new source of magic.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. The next question that they had is, does Ralph really exist? Will we get that answer in the next episode? Do we need it?
I don't think we need it.
Yeah, I don't think we need it. And also, I don't think there is a Ralph, because when Agatha, during the Agatha All Along, we saw Agatha sort of fly into to Westview as a witch and transform herself. There was no husband. So if there was a husband, it would have had to be someone that she picked up from the reality. So my guess is there's no Ralph.
Okay. Will another villain be introduced? Do you think we might get a tease for one of the subsequent films, whether it's Spider-Man 3 or Doctor Strange? This might lead maybe into someone's bold prediction, maybe. But it is a question TV Line had. Do we think a villain will be introduced?
I say no, because I've said for, the past 5 or 6 episodes, Wanda is the big bad. So introducing a villain at this point would be superfluous, unless it was in the form of a mid-credit or post-credit after the episode of, some, extra-dimensional entity who's, sensed this new source of power. But I don't think it'll be a sense of, introducing a new villain in the direct context of WandaVision.
Yeah, I agree with Professor X. I think it's going to be a post-credit scene with just a shot of somebody awakening to this new power that they've felt in the air of chaos magic.
Okay, just a couple questions left that they had. The next one is, what's that big casting surprise? So I don't know if both of you have followed WandaVision news, but Elizabeth Olsen in an interview said she was really excited about an appearance that hadn't been leaked. She said, I think in the article it said something like that it was a Skywalker-sized or Skywalker potential cameo. If you've seen The Mandalorian, you know what I'm referring to. Paul Bettany, in another interview, similarly teased that he worked for with an actor that he's always wanted to work with, and that sort of thing. Although some people now think that maybe he was being cheeky, and in essence, he was talking about himself. You know, Paul Bettany working with himself because of now we have the double visions. But do we think there might be some sort of secret cameo that we don't know about? Do we think?
I don't think so. I think it's too late in the game. I honestly think it's just gonna be Paul Bettany working with himself.
Okay. Professor, you would agree?
Well, I think yeah, it's definitely Paul Bettany playing opposite himself. But I think in terms of cameos, it's got to be Cumberbatch.
Okay. The next question is, I feel we all agree we have to get the answer to in the next episode. Where are Monica and Pietro? Yes, we need to know that. The other question they had is, what happened between Monica and Captain Marvel? I don't think this is something that we'll even get reference to in the next episode. I think this is something that will probably be discussed in Captain Marvel too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Another question that I'm sure Professor has, does Dottie have a bigger role to play? Like, we haven't seen Dottie. Like, do we think this is something that will be answered, or do we think that this was just Emma Caulfield being on the show was kind of fan service for fans of genre television?
I think there has to be something more with Dottie. Whether she turns out to be Jimmy Woo's informant or something like that, but there has to be more to it than just because she did have a big role, and we have seen her a couple of times in the in just flashes of various characters. I think there has to be more to it than that.
Okay, Priscilla, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree too.
Okay, and their final question is Wanda a mutant? Do we think we will get the answer to that in the next episode? Is that something that might be explored in one of the subsequent films? Or do you think it's just going to be that she's, the Scarlet Witch, this mythical witch figure? I know the Professor, you kind of already gave your answer to that. I don't know if you want to expand on that. I don't know if, Priscilla, if you agreed with what the Professor said.
Well, I think she had an innate ability, which was brought out by either the Infinity Stone or by her reaching back through time to bring that out. But the question then becomes, what about Pietro? Why did Pietro have those powers?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. I read a theory online. Some people were like, maybe once her powers were, sort of awakened by the stone, she in essence used, maybe without even knowing, some magic to protect Pietro from the stones, maybe lethal nature and that sort of thing, and that's how it worked. When I read it, I was like, that's kind of like a strong reach. So I don't know if I buy that. So clearly the stone awakens something in Pietro as well. Priscilla, what about you? Your thoughts on the M word?
I think we're not going to get the M word this TV series, but I think we're going to get it in the movies.
Okay. I do agree with that. All right, so now it's time for my big questions. The first one is, so who's the big bad? After this episode, after watching everything that we watched, after watching Wanda in the past, after getting maybe a greater understanding of Agatha as she sort of poked and prodded Wanda's visions of the past, who's the big bad, in your opinion?
Grief.
Oh, that's so existential. I love it.
I kind of agree. I feel like, not to make it, all right, to not make it non-existential, but I feel like had Hayward just given the body to be buried, it would have let her grieve in a way that would have been healthy, that wouldn't have been just a shooting out of chaos magic everywhere, that would have been focused on something, on a body being buried, on the way normal people grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way she grieved for her brother, I would assume, by burying his body.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like a part of me wants to say like, oh my god, it's Hayward for bringing up Cataract, because you know for sure that Cataract is gonna fight against Vision. It's just gonna be a thing. But
That's usually what happens, biologically speaking.
yeah. But for the other thing, I hate to say it, but the main villain here is Wanda.
See, that's interesting. Because I have my own take on it. Because, like, I mean, okay. So, okay, so let me answer this first. So, at the end of the previous episode, Agatha all along, we ended it with like, oh my God, was she really behind all this? Was she, this, that, or the other? And it did make me question Agatha. And I think I remember saying, and I've said this before, I think, I don't want Agatha as the villain, because I like the idea of Agatha with how they've used her in the comics, and I want a sort of mentor type of character for Wanda. Someone that will help her, live her best potential life possible and that sort of thing. And plus, I like Catherine Hahn, as she's fantastic in the character, whether she's full-on witch or she's dressed in modern attire and that sort of thing. She's just fantastic. So I feel like this episode wrote an out for Agatha being a full-on villain. Even though we did see her do villainous things, we saw her suck the life force out of the entire coven, or at least some of the Covenites, and that sort of thing. But I do think, that was hundreds of years ago, and it looks like she's evolved. And I believe she won't be seen as an antagonistic figure, maybe moving forward. At least that's my hope. She is kind of choking children at the moment, so there is that. Wanda, as far as being a big bad, because the way I see a big bad, I see them as a character that maybe potentially can't be redeemed. Maybe did they cross a line that's way too much and that sort of thing. And we've talked about, will Wanda cross the line? Will this be, will the series be something that sets Wanda up as a villain maybe in Doctor Strange 2 and that stuff? And I don't know if we're going to get that. I mean, basically, we have to wait on what happens in the next episode, because maybe something will happen where Wanda will fully crack. We don't know that yet. Bold prediction time is coming up. But if that doesn't happen, I don't know if I would really call Wanda the big bad. I mean, she has taken an entire community hostage. But I think over the course of, Doctor Strange or something, I think this will be an incident kind of like what happened in Sokovia or in Lagos, where Wanda will be forgiven for this. I don't think she's crossed a line yet, especially because we saw that she didn't do it in a malicious way. She did it because it was this chaos magic that she doesn't know how to control, and she did it because she was grieving. So I think they've written an out for Wanda being the villain. Now, as far as Hayward, I think he's the villain. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know if he's going to get his comeuppance. I did read a theory online, because in the film world, Spider-Man Far From Home takes place several months after the blip, as they call it, when people returned. So some people think that maybe Nick Fury could be a cameo, and Nick Fury could take over Sword from Hayward, because in essence, whatever could happen in the next episode could be a big failure on Hayward's part. And I'm like, you know what, that would make sense, potentially, storyline-wise, because if that end credit scene in Spider-Man Far From Home with Nick Fury up in space with the Skrulls, if that means maybe that he's in charge of Sword, maybe that could be rewritten as him being in charge of Sword, then I could kind of dig that, and I could buy it, and I could get it. But I do think Hayward's comeuppance will happen in the next episode, because I feel like he is the big bad sort of period of WandaVision. He's going to be the antagonist. He has been the antagonist. All right, bold prediction. I know I kind of gave, I guess, one in that, but bold prediction time. What is 100% going to happen? What do you feel 100% will happen in the season/series finale of WandaVision? Professor, I think you're ready to go.
Well, I've been saying pretty much since episode 3, Vision's got to die. And certainly our version of Vision is going to die. Whether White Vision will continue on in some form, I don't know. But I think the Vision that Wanda reanimated is gone. I'm sort of hoping that White Vision, depending on what they do with him, goes as well. But I don't know. I do know that our Vision, the Vision that we've come to know and love, will die. I think you have to have Doctor Strange show up simply because if he doesn't, he's the worst Sorcerer Supreme ever. Agatha detected this going on, but he didn't. The way I want it to play out is, maybe towards the end of it or maybe at the very end of it, glowing, circle of light, Doctor Strange steps through, sees Agatha, nods to her and goes, Miss Harkness. Agatha goes, Stephen, indicating that they know each other. They have a past history. They're familiar with each other. They've worked with each other in the past. But I do agree with you. I think, if we're, but I don't think that could be the big cameo that Elizabeth Olsen was talking about, simply because it's so obvious that Doctor Strange should come in, not just because there's magical shit going on, but because we know that, she's going to be in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. So we kind of have to have Doctor Strange show up. It's almost, a plot armor situation. So I do think that, Hayward will be, removed from power. And I think, Nick Fury will show up, take control of S.W.O.R.D., and that will explain what we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home.
Okay. I like all of that. Priscilla, what about you? Bold predictions, please.
I don't think Nick Fury will take over S.W.O.R.D. I think Monica will take over S.W.O.R.D.
Ooh.
And I think that for Vision dying, I think he's going to merge with Blank Vision and create Vision again.
A new Vision?
Yes, a new Vision, I would say. He's going to create himself whole once again, something that can walk out of the hex and walk out alive. And I think that's where, she can create the Mind Stone or something to that effect to put on his forehead to bring him back to life, to bring him back to being complete Vision, her Vision.
Oh.
I would say that, what else can I say that's a bold prediction? Because I think the Sorcerer Supreme is going to come too, just because as shitty as it sounds, it's true. He would be a really shitty Sorcerer Supreme if he didn't notice that there's magics being batted around everywhere and he's not taking care of shit. And he's in the New York aisle. This is where he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be nearby.
Yeah.
I want to push back against the Vision restoration thing. If that's the case, it totally guts this entire series. Why did we watch it? The whole point of it was that Wanda had to deal with grief. She had to deal with the loss and find a way to move on. If she just recreates Vision, that would be a total cop-out for the series. Vision has to die in order for this series to have any meaning.
I didn't say... Well, you don't know if the kids are going to die, though. Because the kids are constructs of the Hex.
Killing children.
True, but I think it's more significant that, because she started this whole thing because she couldn't deal with the loss of Vision. If at the end of it she gets Vision back, I think it totally... It would be like, why do we spend 9 episodes watching this? I think he has to die, or, the Vision that we know dies, and the only one that continues is Paul Bettany in white makeup, but a total soulless, emotionless, android that, she has no connection with. But I think she has to have the loss, and that's the point of this whole series, is dealing with loss.
I don't disagree with you, Professor, at all. But I really like Paul Bettany as Vision. So I hope that they find a way to keep the character. Even if he is the emotionless husk, Vision, and maybe at some point they can not bring Vision back, but have him learn and gain emotions or whatever. I do agree it might be a little too soon to merge them, although personally, because I enjoy Paul Bettany and I enjoy him as Vision, I kind of don't mind that. But I do understand what you're saying, that it is a little bit of a cop-out, although Wanda would have gone on a journey about grief. So it's not like she didn't learn anything. But I'm so torn because I like Vision and I don't want to lose the character. But story-wise, we probably will lose the character. I think the only way to fix that problem, if they do end up doing what Priscilla said, and I have read theories about that online, people think that both of the visions are going to combine. The only way to end the series would be if she loses the kids. And if she loses the kids, I could see that kind of pushing her over the edge. She would, in essence, maybe be happy that Vision is back, but then the kids disappear. And if that's what makes her go mad, or if that's what sort of spawns the idea of the multiverse of madness, where she's searching the multiverse for her kids, I don't know how immediately she's going to jump to the multiverse. So I feel like something has to happen to create the multiverse of madness. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how they're going to do that, though, unless they do bring back the idea of the Nexus and the Nexus beings, or just the Nexus location. Clearly, they included that as a commercial for a reason, I would think. So maybe that's something that'll come back in the next episode. I don't know. I do co-sign the Doctor Strange cameo. I feel like it's important. A Nick Fury cameo would be awesome. Hayward being taken down is necessary. I do need a little bit more answers when it comes to Monica and where she is, and maybe some sort of example of her powers. And I think I need a little bit of an answer as far as fake Pietro, as as Agatha called him. Is he just like a normal person there, or some people were wondering if maybe he's Nicholas Scratch himself. I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like we need another scene with him, especially interacting with Agatha now that we know she's Agatha. Yeah, and where's Darcy? I'm just saying, she's up there somewhere. Okay, so there's a lot of things we want to see. I do know it will probably be tragic. I've said this before, WandaVision is probably going to end up being the funnest, saddest TV show that we've ever seen. There's a lot of fun, there's a lot of lightness, especially with the sitcom motif, but underneath it all is just the idea of grief and someone, needing to learn how to properly express that grief, and that person is Wanda Maximoff. All right, before we get into the MVP, anything else? Did I miss anything? Anything else anyone wants to say now or forever hold your peace?
I'd just like to point out all those people who were saying the two people in the commercial were obviously Wanda's parents. Nah. Everyone just jumping to these conclusions and, obviously this is the case. Obviously that's the case. You were wrong.
That is true. That was a theory that I read online that I did mention. Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, I would assume there are people in Westview somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Stuck doing commercials.
Although we haven't seen them. It is curious.
Yeah. I would assume that they were probably just unlucky people that were stuck doing commercials instead of actually having character roles like everyone else in Westview. All right, so now it's time for the MVP, the most valuable player. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character has been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. I'll be honest, and I don't know if we'll all agree, but I feel like there was really only one MVP. Should we all say her name together? Wanda, right? Do you agree,
Wanda,
Professor?
I think Agnes, in a supporting role was very good as well.
Okay, so I'll just collectively, we'll give them to both of them. Yeah, a TV line, they do a weekly Performer of the Week, and they selected Elizabeth Olsen as their Performer of the Week. I think it's appropriate. This is a genre television series. They usually don't get a lot of love at the Emmys or the Golden Globes, but I do hope WandaVision, probably as a limited series where it would have a better chance, I feel like it needs nominations. Definitely Elizabeth Olsen, Catherine Hahn, Paul Bettany, the costuming, makeup, VFX. I feel like they deserve all of the awards and all of the nominations, but especially in particular Elizabeth Olsen in this episode. So now it's time to rate the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 televisions? The point system is allowed, and if you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may grant it the coveted golden television. Priscilla, how would you rate this episode?
I would grant it a 9. Like, I like review episodes. I feel like it tugged at the heartstrings, but it didn't really shake me up to the core. Like, it didn't make me go, wow, something amazing happened. Oh my God. Like, it just answered questions for me. So I'm going to give it a 9.
All right, 9 TVs from Priscilla. Professor?
Golden television for me. While it did just answer questions, I thought it did so in a tremendous way. And honestly, I think this may have been my favorite episode of the series so far.
Wow. Very nice. All right, we got a 9. We got a golden. I agree with one of you, and that person will be the professor. I'm living my life like it's golden. I loved the episode. It was just so good from beginning to end, and Elizabeth Olsen and Catherine Hahn were stellar in the episode, but in particular Elizabeth Olsen. I mean, she was a roller coaster of emotions, and I felt every single emotion. It was just beautiful. If this was, in essence, the clip show of WandaVision, it was the best damn clip show ever. And that line of, it's time for some real-life reruns, spectacular. All right, everyone. 1 episode left. The season/series finale of WandaVision premieres later on this week. So on that note, join us next time for a brand new installment of the Avengers Initiative, WandaVision. Here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Poppy Chula Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Poppy Chula Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychularadio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chula Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychularadio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chula Radio programs by visiting poppychularadio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Avengers Initiative, WandaVision, and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-hosts, please wish the listeners a good night, starting off with the professor.
Good night, everyone.
And Priscilla.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Download new episodes of The Avengers Initiative, WandaVision, every Tuesday via Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and the Poppy Chula Radio archives. Good night.